forces are shaping our digital world, some of which are not acting in our best interests.
The technology is effective as a surveillance tool to identify and then intimidate people.
They're monitoring email. They're monitoring phone calls.
The government shouldn't be able to spy on us.
We need to know what the government is doing.
This should be concerning for everybody.
Yes, we use social media just like everybody else.
People are seeking to express themselves in ways that challenge the authority of the monarchy, that challenge the status quo.
We know that we're right to do this work.
You've got to build a world that you want to live in.
We have to know what's going on, or all of a sudden we wake up in a country that we don't even recognize anymore.
Video in the hands of ordinary citizens is changing the world.
We're seeing a movement unlike any we've ever seen, a challenge to routine police abuse.
You're a public servant. You're supposed to serve the people.
And citizen journalism has been the core of that.
How many times you gonna punch it?
Cell phones, social media accounts, and inexpensive video cameras are driving a revolution in journalism. And shifting the balance of power between citizens and the police.
Something needs to be done about the culture that creates all the police shootings. If the video adds to that reform, then it's worth it.
Law enforcement is pushing back with images of its own and suggesting viral videos are to blame for a rise in crime.
In today's YouTube world, are officers reluctant to get out of their cars and do the work that controls violent crime?
The police are facing extraordinary resistance in many inner city communities right now.
How is new journalism challenging power as technology allows communities to tell their own stories?
This is the First Amendment come to life. What we're seeing now is a power shift from the top to the bottom.
In an era of radical transparency, who gets to tell the story of the police?
It's empty. There's nobody here. I feel like I'm walking through a ghost town. It's like I'm walking through a shell of what my life used to be. This is the location where I shot the video. I was actually, I placed my iPad in this window. As you can see, I got the view to what was going on. And I came out right here and ran upstairs to see what was going on. I miss this shit, but I don't know what to say. I could see the police and the people, so I continued filming. Then I walked over there, over the hill, to see what was going on. And that's why I discovered the bodies.
Only minutes before, Ferguson police had shot and killed unarmed teenager Michael Brown.
August 9th, it was like standing in a war zone. It smelled like the 4th of July, kind of, because of the gunpowder.
Chris Seltzer and other citizen journalists in Ferguson used mobile devices to film, tweet, Facebook, and Instagram the events that followed. And their version was going viral.
Police shot this man for no reason.
Long before national media or cable news arrived on the scene, the Ferguson community was telling its own story.
The problem was the police presence in Canfield. They used to just sit in the neighborhood like lions, stalk and prey. only white officers came in our neighborhood, and they didn't know how to talk to us. Seeing them interact with the community was disturbing. It was upsetting. Before, we had to tell the police on the police, and that was hard to do. Using those cameras, we stopped having to tell the police. I don't have to tell you, I'm gonna tell America.
When appropriate technology gets in the hands of people everywhere, it is absolutely critical. Video cameras, cell phones, people documenting their own existence allows them to frame the narrative, and that has changed everything.
A Sunday night candlelight meeting turns violent as residents of Ferguson, Missouri take to the streets protesting the death of 18-year-old Michael Brown.
The streets of Ferguson exposed a charged landscape of new journalism. Citizens filming with mobile devices stood shoulder to shoulder with primetime and cable news reporters, all attempting to tell their version of the story.
There is nothing going on this street right now that merits this scene out of Bagram.
Technology was changing what the public could see, and it was ordinary citizens armed with inexpensive cameras and social media accounts who were driving the narrative.
At the heart of all of this, right, is that the First Amendment requires that we are able to gather the information to inform our democracy. And what we see now is not some special group of people in society able to carry the banner of the First Amendment, but every single person can carry that banner themselves. I mean, this is the First Amendment come to life.
But it came from people on the ground who were saying, no, we will not take this anymore.
Law enforcement tried to regain control. Members of the press were forced into limited media areas away from the action. Mickey Osterreicher, General Counsel of the National Press Photographers Association, says that was illegal.
Now, the media compound was set up, as often happens, as a convenience to the media. It doesn't mean that that's where the media is the only place that they could be, but for some reason, law enforcement thought that that was true.
Tensions between journalists and the police soon turned violent.
One of the reasons that I went to Ferguson was the fact that we were seeing a lot of journalists being arrested, just doing their jobs.
Stop videotaping, let's grab our stuff and go.
I was thrown up into a fountain soda machine because we weren't leaving a private establishment fast enough and had the audacity to videotape police officers.
Police then released this video of Michael Brown.
Okay, we're taking the stealing in progress. Stand by for further. 25, it's going to be a black male in a white t-shirt.
He's with another male. He's got a red Cardinals hat, white t-shirt.
21 to 25 or 22. You guys see me?
The family feels that that was strategic. They think it was aimed at denigrating their son. It was a character assassination.
The Department of Justice sent agents into the community to collect any visual evidence they could find of the shooting of Michael Brown. That included video taken by Chris Seltzer. Rights attorney Nabia Sayed says citizen journalists don't have the protection of traditional media.
If you think about that, for a citizen reporter, like, you don't even have an institution behind you, you're just like a dude with a phone. I mean, that's a really precarious, hard position to be in.
The FBI pulled up in Canfield like in the movies. They were like 3 cars deep. They all got out together with FBI jackets on, and they fanned out.
After the killing of Michael Brown, the FBI and the Department of Justice believed Chris Seltzer's video may have contained an answer to a critical piece of the Ferguson narrative. Did Michael Brown have his hands up when he was shot by Officer Darren Wilson? The Department of Justice later rejected the claim.
I didn't understand what I possessed for is the historic factor, the power, the moment.
Those in power are not used to being challenged. When there is an official version of a story, all too often the corporate media, the mainstream media, have taken the police version of the story and never had a counter.
You see that? Did you see that?
The fact that there are people on the ground in their own communities documenting what's happening there has changed the landscape of journalism, of accountability. Really, what we're seeing now is a power shift from the top to the bottom.
That power shift is happening in communities across America.
We're seeing a movement unlike any we've ever seen, a challenge to routine police abuse, challenge to police power, police abuse of power. And citizen journalism has been the core of that.
What in the hell are you doing?
Routinely filming the police is often called cop watching. Cop watch organizations started in Berkeley, California in 1990 and are now active in dozens of cities across the United States, including Austin, Texas. Antonio Buehler started college at the United States Military Academy at West Point.
I got my MBA at Stanford, and I got a Master's of Education at Harvard.
Buehler was a captain in the United States Army. He did tours in Germany, Kosovo, and Iraq, where he was awarded the Bronze Star. New Year's Eve 2012 was the first time he turned his camera on the police.
I had taken a buddy to a party in Northwest Austin. I was the designated driver that night. The fuel gauge was on empty, so I pulled into a gas station on 10th and Lamar.
Antonio saw a DUI stop in progress. The stop quickly turned violent.
There's a passenger in the car. The police officer ripped the woman out of the car. She started screaming and crying. The other police officer joined in. They started twisting her arms up behind her back. I started yelling out to the police officers. The one police officer, Patrick Borski, then said, "Don't worry about it, worry about yourself." We took out our cell phones, tried to take some pictures. And I had never before taken pictures of police officers. I had never before yelled at them in public. And as they were taking her back to the vehicle, Officer Borski then turned and came at me. He started pushing and shoving me. Ultimately, he ends up taking me to the ground, putting me in a chokehold, and then he said, "Shut the fuck up. You don't know what the fuck was going on. You don't fuck with police. You don't get involved with police business, and now you're gonna fucking pay." One of the jailers told me that I had been charged with a felony, and that a felony carries a 2 to 10 year prison sentence. That's when I found out what he meant by "you're gonna effing pay."
On New Year's Day 2012, Antonio Buehler filmed a violent altercation with the police and was immediately arrested and threatened. Many have paid a price for filming the police.
When the cop had said to me, "You'll see me again and you can count on that."
Often, citizens who witness abuse don't understand that they have strong protections under the First Amendment.
If you're standing on public property looking at something that is in plain public view, you have a right to be there and you have a right to record unless where you happen to be standing is interfering with law enforcement responsibilities. So if you're standing on a crime scene that normally is in fact a public road, take 10 steps back, keep recording. It's that simple.
Think of it this way. If it isn't illegal to do something without a camera, then it shouldn't be illegal to do it with the camera. There are no circumstances under which police may delete or alter or destroy the recording of another person, because you're not only violating the person's First Amendment rights, but you're violating their Fourth Amendment right to unreasonable search and seizure, and you're violating their 14th Amendment right where they're entitled to due process.
A few months after Buehler was first arrested, he fought back. He picked up a camera and formed the Peaceful Streets Project.
Does everyone have their camera equipment?
A grassroots organization to hold police accountable.
After we started the Peaceful Streets Project, they continued to arrest me. They were filing reports claiming that I was a domestic extremist. They were trying to get me labeled as a domestic terrorist.
Since his first arrest at the gas station on New Year's Eve, Buehler has been arrested 5 times, had 12 charges leveled against him, and dozens of criminal and felony investigations.
Are you arresting me?
He has been cleared of every one. but others haven't been so fortunate.
And stopped by police.
When you look at what happened with Eric Garner, July 2014, taken down by police in a stranglehold and ultimately killed. It is all documented because of a young man named Ramsey Orton who flipped open his cell phone
Same old shit.
right after the coroner announces the death of Eric Garner as a homicide. He's arrested. His mother is arrested. He's arrested again.
Been harassed by cops since this happened.
He said at one point in one of these arrests, the police said to him, "You filmed us, now we're filming you."
The pushback against video taken by citizen journalists has risen to the highest levels of law enforcement. Heather McDonald, a fellow at the Manhattan Institute, thinks video of cops can be misleading.
Officers are concerned that a video may not show the full encounter. They may not show the provocation that led to an officer's use of force. And so a partial video will go viral, create a firestorm of protest, and the officers are worried that they won't be backed up by their command staff or the police chief.
In 2015, FBI Director James Comey took criticism of citizen journalists further, implying viral videos of police might be causing an increase in crime.
I spoke to officers privately in one big city precinct who described being surrounded by young people with mobile phones held high, taunting them when they get out of their cars. They said to me, "We feel under siege and we don't feel much like getting out of our cars."
If people taking out their cell phones and documenting police behavior means they will be less aggressive when it comes to illegal behavior, that's fine.
FBI Director James Comey and others have said that police might be pulling back from their duties, implying viral video taken by citizen journalists might be the problem.
They are certainly responding to 911 calls when there's been a victim of a crime. If there's been a robbery, they're going to go racing to that crime scene. But the sort of proactive policing that was key to the crime drop over the last 2 decades of driving and seeing somebody hanging out on a known drug corner at 1 a.m., hitching up his waistband as if he has a gun, the police don't have to make that stop.
Joseph Imperatrice is the founder of a pro-police group called Blue Lives Matter.
I don't think police are afraid to get out and do their job. I think they're afraid that if there's a camera there, is the truth from the video going to be seen? And the cop, even if he's 100% okay, he's still getting modified or suspended or his name and family embarrassed in the paper. And that's what's going on right now.
At a meeting of many of the nation's top law enforcement officers in Washington, D.C., Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel made similar comments.
We have allowed our police department to get vetoed, and it is having a direct consequence.
This alleged pullback of police officers has come to be known as the Ferguson effect, but not everyone agrees. Both President Obama and current Attorney General Loretta Lynch called the statements into question.
There may be anecdotal evidence there. As all have noted, there's no data to support it.
Normal policing on camera shouldn't end your career. Part of it is if we don't like the real truth of what police work looks like, that's a different national conversation to be having. But saying we don't want a conversation around it and your stupid camera is the one starting the conversation is just not an answer to the problem.
I do think there is a Ferguson effect. The effect is that if you document, perhaps you can change the world. You can hold people accountable. The Ferguson effect is making this country more just, is changing the balance of power.
The police now have a new tool in the battle over the narrative, their own cameras. The Obama administration has enacted a $75 million 3-year plan to provide body cams to police officers.
A body cam is a small camera and it can record hours of video.
I'm not against body cameras. I think they're a very expensive solution to a non-problem. But by all means, let's have them because they are going to exonerate officers in the overwhelming majority of situations.
But the devices are raising a lot of questions about who gets to see the footage and when.
The problem with body cams is who the camera is on and where the footage is going. but we don't know who's actually watching the footage and who's actually carrying out any of the accountability.
The whole idea of having body cams is for transparency. So police departments can say, we're being transparent. We want you to know what our officers are doing. We're proud of what they're doing. Well, then you can't, in the same breath, hide behind them, but you don't get to see these videos.
That question of access to the video is already being fought with police dashcam videos. In 2015, freelance journalist Brandon Smith forced the disclosure of a video showing the killing of 17-year-old African-American Laquan McDonald. McDonald was shot 16 times.
Something needs to be done about the culture that creates all the police shootings. My thought was, if the video adds to that reform, then it's worth it.
The video sparked widespread protests throughout Chicago and high-level calls for Mayor Rahm Emanuel to step down after he allegedly buried it during a close re-election campaign.
This is like nothing Rahm Emanuel has ever faced, not even in 2 White Houses.
For both police and citizen journalists, the battle over basic human rights and civil liberties is being fought with an arsenal of new technologies. But for the first time, citizens are on the same level as mainstream media or law enforcement in their ability to tell their own story of what's happening on the streets.
The media can be the greatest force for peace on earth. Instead, all too often, it's wielded as a weapon of war. I see people who take out their cell phones and document what's happening as part of a larger independent media movement. And independent media is the oxygen of a democracy.
We can give people who live in those spaces the ability to share and record and express, which is what citizen journalism allows. We finally have kind of the fundamental information we need to start to solve the problem.
This is one of the most important freedoms. The right to assemble, the right for redress of grievances, freedom of speech, freedom of the press. And if we don't stand up for those rights, there's a good likelihood that they'll just be whittled away. The one suggestion that I do make to people is that whatever you do, keep rolling.